Hi, my name is Scott. I work over here at UKG with my counterpart Lynette, and I'm here to run through some follow-up questions that you had from the demonstration. I'll run through the question as I've got it written here on my screen, and then hopefully that'll jog your memory as to what was asked. The first question was around seeing the variance report. This is referring to a payroll variance report. Apparently, we weren't able to find that on the demonstration. There's a few ways to see this. I go to this earning tax deduction listing report. And then what this will do is it allows me to look at specific pay dates, and I can see amounts and everything for those pay dates by department, or for example, by employee. Um, you can kind of break that up any way you'd like, really. We just uh, went through and built out these examples. As you can see, for any given pay date, I can see totals over here. And then if I expand that, I can see the details behind it. So if I want to see a detailed report, if I want to see just the summary, it's just a matter of clicking the little keys there. And I mentioned that's employee, department, pretty much anything, any way you'd like to break that out. You can go in and compare across any time period you like. In this case, I'm just doing two pay periods, but I can go further than that. The next question was on clarity on the button that says upload hours into payroll. Specifically, I don't want to have another payroll system. So let me explain this button. It's actually currently turned off, but when you go into process payroll, part of the first step is going to be your time prep. So as you go into time prep, the system will walk you through a series of steps here, and you get down to these steps here: review results, and then lock pay period. So UKG Ready is a comprehensive human capital management, meaning it's got time, payroll, HRIS, all those just built right into the system. The button you were seeing was a button that would push the data to another pay. So for example, if you decided to go with us for timekeeping and HR, but wanted to keep your payroll system, that button would push the data over to your payroll. But the payroll's built in, so you wouldn't have that option here. I'll just go ahead and enable it real quick so you can see it. So here's the option turned on. So again, this is just saying, hey, if you're using, I don't know, QuickBooks or somebody for payroll, I want to push over to that. And on our end, we would just turn that off, or we would never enable it to begin with in your implementation. So just that's a back end flip of a switch for us. So I've turned that off again. We'll just go ahead and refresh the screen and you'll see the button just goes away. So that's all that is for people who want to use a third-party payroll. The next one talks about system tax supplemental versus regular earnings. When we add a new earnings code, how do we know if it's regular or supplemental? For that one, we just go to your earnings codes, hit add new. And when you do, this preset list comes up. So if I were to type in, for example, bonus, I've got a bonus built in there with the supplemental tax rate. Or if I just want to do regular earnings, I've got a regular earnings code built in. So it's just built in on the back end. The only thing you really have to do is, if you add an earnings code, indicate whether it's supplemental or not. And then once you've done that, you can label these any way you'd like. So you could add in a uh, bonus and call it whatever you'd like once you've established whether or not it's supplemental. So just initial, you just choose off of a list, and that tells you as you're creating it whether it's regular or supplemental. Next question, TriNet doesn't offer an employer match or allow employer match. How do we build it into your system? Examples were dependent care and FSA. So there's a few ways to do this, but for this one, I'd go to my deduction codes. And inside the deduction codes, let's go ahead and find FSA. So here's dependent care as an example. I'm going to go into there. And the match could be any number of things, right? For any specific code, I can go in and tell the system whether or not an employer portion exists. So I'm going to turn this on and save it. And when I do, it'll highlight stuff that I need to do. So down here, it's saying, hey, if there's a deduction, what is it? So just a couple of example, or sorry, if there's an employer contribution rather, what is it? So just as an example, let's say towards whatever method I want to contribute $250, I just put that in, leave it at flat amount. And then down here, I tell the system, oh, maybe that's just an annual thing. First payroll of the year, we give these guys $250. And obviously we could do this by pay period or monthly or quarterly, or there's a bunch of ways you could potentially do it. Now, if the match is something a little more traditional, like you can go in and say, look, we're actually going to give them 2% of earnings, then in here you could go in and say, well, what earnings are we talking about? And I could just go in and say all earn, like literally anything, all their earnings they're getting, or I could go in and create a custom list. Hey, we're just doing this match based on regular and overtime. And I can even go in and do something like this, where I go in and say, let's do earnings and deductions. So let's ignore earnings here and let's go into the deductions and grab dependent care. So now what I'm telling the system is I'm going to give 2% towards whatever the employee contributes. So if the employee contributes, $1,000, I'm contributing 2% on top of that. And that's the same for FSA, the cafeteria kind of plan too. If you were to match that, you just have those same options in there. So you just come in, turn on that employer portion. It flags the areas you want to fill out, and it's the exact same process there. Next one was around a severance tracker, employee state, revocation period built in. Let's go ahead and talk to that. That's your severance would be an earnings code in the system. So in the earnings codes here, we'd have one for you called severance pay. And then if I go to an individual employee, I would go in and assign that to them. And this typically would be something, maybe part of an offboarding checklist. Hey, this person's leaving or being let go for whatever reason, we're giving them a severance. So we'd have a checklist, assign it. But if I want to just manually come in and say, hey, I'm going to go in and add in a severance, I could go to their earnings, and over here I'd hit new. And then what it would do is it'd walk you through, but basically it wants you to put in, when does the severance begin and when does it end? So let's say we're giving him, I don't know, 2 years of severance or whatever the case may be, and I put that in there. And then down here, same as we saw a minute ago, maybe it's just a flat amount, and then here we specify the frequency. So if I'm giving him $10,000 a month, I drop that in there. Every month on whatever payroll I choose, the system would generate that severance pay amount. Underneath that, there's this section here for processing values. This is kind of your tracker. So what'll happen here is it'll show you how much they've got, how much was contributed to last pay period, how much has been paid month to date, quarter to date, and then year to date. And if you wanted, you could set up flags in the system too when you go to process payroll. Like maybe once the severance hits a certain amount, then it flags you. So you could set up reminders that way if you wanted to. If someone switches entities, does it prorate pay automatically? So this one, if we go to an individual here, there's a process in the system where we assign the employee their EIN. Let's find the EIN here. So this particular employee is in a company called MCO, and that's also their primary EIN. Well, if I switch from one entity to another, I basically duplicate my profile, but I don't duplicate my timesheet. So I would have two profiles, one for the old EIN and one for the new EIN. And then when I go into the actual timesheet itself, and this is weekly is just an example here, whether you're weekly, biweekly, semi-monthly, monthly, whatever the pay cycle is, then in here, the hours for any specific day are charged to whatever entity is there. So this employee on Monday was working in this entity, and starting today, now they're working in this new GCO entity. So the system's automatically just going to split it based on, in this case, the date that those hours are charged to. It could be more specific than that. Half of the hours this day could go to one entity, half could go to another. But in this example, the time prior to Thursday, so let's throw in some extra time here. This time here is being charged to that MCO, and then this is being charged to GCO. So it lets you go in and specify exactly how you want that to work. If the employee's strictly salary and they don't use the time at all, even then we could use this same methodology to help do that split. But there is a profile on the back end too called the labor distribution profile that would let you go in and say, I want to do an MCO and GCO split. And then you could actually go in and tell the system, hey, I want some of the pay rather charged to MCO and some charged to GCO. And then here you'd put in your split, 70-30 or whatever that needs to be. So definitely a couple of different ways to accomplish that depending on the type of employee, but easily accomplished in the system. The last one I had in here was details on how we apply for the new state ID. So we actually have a service that would do that for you. All you do is notify us and say, hey, we've hired someone in a new state. We need you to go in and register for the state ID. We would handle that just start to finish for you. I won't give you the exact cost because I don't really know it, but it's roughly $300 somewhere in that range. And your salesperson can give you the exact amount on that. But that's if you chose to have us do it, we'll do it just at a cost. Alternatively, if you do it yourself, you would go apply for the state ID through the state. So that's outside of our system now. And all the settings, by the way, everything I'm showing you today, these are your permissions. This isn't some back end hidden permissions, for example. You would have the exact same access I'm showing you today. But in here, there's a section for your EINs. And so if you go into a specific, now, and I'm using the term EIN here, like let's say we go to a new state as an example, you can just go in here and say tax ID applied for. And then once you receive the tax ID back from the state, then in here you go ahead and put in the actual tax ID. So again, we could manage the whole thing for you. You just notify us, hey, new state, and we'll be like, we'll take care of it. We got it. Or you could come in and add it in here. And initially, this button here would just take care of everything until you've got the actual state ID. Hopefully that covers all the questions you had. If you have any other concerns, please don't hesitate to let us know.